His hat was brown and worn, creased from years of sun and wind. Nobody paid attention to him anymore. Nobody really looked at old Tom. He had come to the auction yard because he had nowhere else to go. 3 months ago, Thomas Mercer had lost everything. His ranch, the place where he had lived for 45 years, the place where he was born. He thought maybe he would see old friends, maybe hear their voices again. Maybe someone would remember that he used to own land, that he used to matter, that he used to be somebody. But the friends he saw only turned away or looked at their boots. People felt sad around sadness. People did not want to see what losing everything looked like. So Thomas stood alone by the fence, and he watched the horses come and go. Most of them were strong and beautiful. Farmers wanted them. Ranchers wanted them. The auctioneer, a fat man with a red face, shouted their prices loud and fast. $300, $500, $800. The money flew through the air like it meant nothing. But her eyes were still on fire. "This one is damaged," the auctioneer shouted. "Someone beat her. Someone abused her. She is wild. She is mean. She will bite you. She will kick you." This horse is dangerous, folks. Dangerous and broken. She's unpredictable. She might kill you in your sleep. The auctioneer laughed. Many people in the crowd laughed too. A young rancher raised his hand. $20? $20, the auctioneer shouted. "Do I hear 25?" Nobody raised their hand. The crowd was not interested in a broken horse. A broken horse cost money and gave nothing back. A broken horse was a bad choice. Thomas watched the foal. She was trying to pull away from the handler. She wanted to run. She was scared and angry and alone. She had scars that told stories of pain. She had eyes that had seen things no young horse should see. She was the loneliest thing Thomas had ever seen. He thought about his wife Sarah. She had died 5 years ago. He remembered the last day, her hand light as paper in his own. He remembered how she said, "Tom, don't be angry at the world for taking me. Be grateful for the time we had." But he had been angry. He was still angry. And then he lost the ranch too, and the anger turned into something deeper. It turned into the feeling that he was broken now. "Tom," Jake called, "that horse will kill you. You got no ranch, no money, no business buying a broken horse." "Going once at $70, the auctioneer said, surprised. Other people laughed. A woman whispered something to her husband, and they both looked at Thomas with pity. The stable keeper, a man named Curtis, actually walked over to warn him. And said, "You know what? I always thought you were smart, but you're just sad and crazy now. That horse is broken. You can't fix broken things." Thomas paid the money. He signed the papers with hands that were shaking not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like hope, even though he had no right to hope. Even though $70 was all he had. The handler led the foal to him.
Thomas Mercer did not have much. He had an old barn. He had a small pen made of wood that his hands built in 2 days. He had a bag of grain and some sugar cubes. And he had a dark foal that nobody in the world wanted. The town did not see him anymore. After he bought the broken horse, people stopped inviting him to the saloon. The store owner, Mrs. Helen, she was kind, but even she looked at him with worry in her eyes, like he was a man making a bad choice that could not be fixed. Thomas did not care what they thought. He took the foal to the barn, far away from the main road where nobody could see them. The barn was old and empty. It had belonged to his neighbor once, but the neighbor had moved away 5 years ago. Thomas had asked permission, and the neighbors said yes. People said yes to old Tom now because they felt sorry for him. Pity was easier than respect. The foal stood in the pen and shook. Her whole body moved with fear and anger. Her eyes were wild. Her ears were back against her head. When Thomas came close, she kicked at the fence so hard that the wood cracked and dust flew into the air. "Easy, girl," Thomas said softly. "Easy." The foal bit at the fence. She did not bite him, but her teeth came close. Very close. Thomas went back into the barn and sat on an old bucket. He was tired. His bones hurt. He was hungry, but not for food. He was hungry for something he could not name. The hunger that lonely people feel. The hunger that comes when you have lost everything and do not know who you are anymore. He decided something that day. He would not break the foal. Everyone else had tried to break her. The people before him had hit her and shouted at her and tried to make her afraid. But fear was what broke her. Fear was what made her wild. Fear was what put those scars on her body and that emptiness in her eyes. Thomas knew about fear. He lived with it every day. So he decided to do something different. He would be quiet. He would be patient. He would show her that not all people hurt. Not all voices came with anger. Not all hands came to strike. The first week was the hardest. Thomas would wake at 4 in the morning, when the sky was still dark and the world was still sleeping. He would walk through the cold to the barn. The foal would be waiting for him, watching, ready to run or fight. Thomas brought a bucket of water and fresh grain. He set them down slowly, making no sudden movements. He did not try to touch her. He did not try to speak to her. He simply sat on an old stool and watched her. The foal would not eat while he was there. She would wait until he left. Thomas could see from a distance that she ate the grain and drank the water. But she would not do it with him watching. She would not accept anything from his hands. This was fine. Thomas had time. He had nothing but time now. Every morning, same time. Every evening, same routine. Thomas would bring food and water. He would sit and be quiet. The foal would wait for him to leave. Days passed like this. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Thomas's hands became rougher. His back hurt more. But something inside him became softer. Something inside him became less lonely. Because for those moments in the barn, sitting quietly with a broken horse, he was not thinking about the ranch he lost. He was not thinking about the wife who died. He was not thinking about the daughter who never called. He was only thinking about this moment, this breath, this quiet. On the 15th day, something changed. Thomas came to the barn at dawn like always. The air was cold enough that he could see his breath. The sun was just starting to turn the sky orange and purple. He set down the bucket of water and the grain, and he sat on his stool. The foal watched him. Her eyes were less wild now, still scared, still angry, but less frantic, less like she would break from the fear. Thomas sat for a long time, maybe an hour, maybe 2. Time moved differently in the barn. It moved slower, softer. Then something incredible happened. The foal walked forward. She did not run. She did not kick. She walked slowly, 1 step at a time, toward Thomas. Her legs were trembling. Her nostrils were flaring. But she walked. She came right up to the fence, and she looked at him, really looked at him, eye to eye, soul to soul. Thomas did not move. He did not speak. He simply breathed and looked back at her. The foal stretched her neck out. Her muzzle came toward his face. Thomas held perfectly still. She sniffed his ear. She sniffed his old jacket. She sniffed his hands. Thomas very slowly reached into his pocket and took out a sugar cube. He held it on his palm and opened his hand toward her. The foal looked at the sugar cube. Then she looked at his eyes. Then, very carefully, very gently, she took the sugar cube from his hand with her soft mouth. Thomas felt something break inside his chest. Not the bad kind of breaking. The kind of breaking that happens when your heart remembers how to love something. When your soul remembers that it is alive. After that day, everything was different. The foal still had her wild moments. She still had her scared moments. But something had changed between them. She knew now that his hands were not there to hurt. She knew now that his voice was not there to shout. She knew now that someone in this world saw her, not as broken, but as brave. Every morning, she would wait by the fence for him. Every evening, she would eat the grain from his hand. Every day, her scars looked a little less like marks of pain and a little more like marks of survival. Thomas started whispering to her. Small words, kind words. You're strong, girl. You're going to be okay. I am here. I am not leaving. The foal would listen with her ears forward. She would listen like these were the most important words she had ever heard. One morning, nearly 3 weeks into their quiet routine, Thomas brought his saddle blanket. He did not put it on her. He just laid it on the fence so she could smell it. The foal sniffed it carefully, then walked away. But she came back. She came back to smell it again. That was when Thomas knew she was ready. Not ready to be broken. Ready to choose him. Ready to trust. Ready to believe that broken things could still be loved. And that was everything. For weeks had passed since Thomas Mercer brought the dark foal to the barn. The town had stopped talking about him. Old Tom was not interesting anymore. He was just a sad man with a broken horse in an old barn. Not worth the gossip. Not worth the pity. Not worth anything at all. He went to the store for grain and supplies. People nodded at him or looked away. Life moved on without him. But in the barn, everything was different. The foal now had a name. Thomas had whispered it to her one night when the moon was full and bright. He called her Hope. She came to the name when he called it. She waited at the fence every morning for his arrival. She ate from his hand without fear. Her scars were still there, long marks on her neck, thin lines on her sides, but they were no longer the first thing you noticed about her. What you noticed now was her eyes. Eyes that had learned to trust again. Eyes that looked at Thomas Mercer like he was the most important person in the whole world. Thomas would spend hours in a barn with her. He would brush her coat with an old brush he found. Her fur, once dull and broken-looking, was starting to shine again. He would talk to her about things he had never told anyone. He told Hope about his wife Sarah and how much he missed her. He told Hope about the roses by the front door that he would never see again. He told Hope about the loneliness that felt like drowning even when you were standing on dry land. Hope would listen. She would rest her head on his shoulder and listen to every word. Then one afternoon, Jake Morrison came to the barn. Jake was Thomas's old neighbor. They had been friends once, years ago, before Tom bought the ranch and Jake did not. Jake had done well for himself. He had cattle and land and a house with a real roof. He was not a bad man, but he was the kind of man who believed in hard work and results. The kind of man who did not understand that some things could not be rushed. "Tom," Jake called out, riding up on a brown horse. "I heard you were still here with that broken foal. How is that working out for you?" Thomas was brushing Hope's coat. He turned and gave Jake a small smile. "She's doing well. Very well, actually." Jake got off his horse and walked to the fence. He looked at Hope for a long time. The foal did not run away. She stood still and let him look. "She looks better," Jake admitted. "I will give you that. She looks healthier. But Tom, you have been here 4 weeks now. 4 weeks of feeding, brushing, talking to a horse. When are you going to do something with her? When are you going to train her? When are you going to make her useful?" Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. "She is useful. She is useful." Jake interrupted. "She's a foal that nobody wanted. You spent $70 on her. You have spent 4 weeks here. You are wasting time, Tom. Real time. Time you do not have." It was true. Thomas was 73 years old. He did not have endless time. People said that to him with their eyes every day. The stable keeper looked at him with worried eyes that said, "You are old and time is running out." The store owner looked at him the same way. Even the preacher, when Thomas went to church, looked at him like time was a thing that was slipping away. Jake was right. Time was running out. You need to put a saddle on her, Jake said. You need to break her to ride. That is what horses are for, Tom. They're not pets. They're not friends. They are tools. And a tool that cannot be used is just a waste of money and time. She is not ready, Thomas said quietly. She will never be ready, Jake said, his voice getting louder. Some horses are made to break. Some horses are made to be ridden. Some horses are made to work. And some horses are just broken, Tom. Broken inside their heads. You cannot fix that. You can only teach them to be useful before they get too old to be worth anything. Jake left after that. He rode away on his brown horse, and dust came up behind him on the road. Thomas stood in the barn for a long time after Jake left. He did not move. He did not speak to Hope. He just stood there in the shadows and let doubt creep into his heart like cold water. What if Jake was right? What if Thomas was wasting time? What if he was an old man pretending that a broken horse could be fixed? What if all of this, the mornings at dawn, the sugar cubes, the quiet conversations, what if it all meant nothing? Thomas was poor. He had no ranch. He had no money. He had $70 left in the world, and he had spent it on a foal that society had thrown away. For what? To feel less lonely? To pretend that he still mattered? To imagine that he could still save something when he could not even save himself? That night, Thomas did not go to the barn. He stayed in the small house he was renting, the one with the thin walls and the cold rooms. He sat on the edge of the bed and thought about giving up. He thought about selling Hope to someone who would use her as a workhorse. He thought about going back to being invisible. He thought about accepting that some people and some horses were just broken. The night was very dark and very long. But at midnight, something woke Thomas from his sad thoughts. A sound came from the direction of the barn. A call. A desperate, searching sound. Thomas stood up and walked to the window. In the moonlight, he could see the barn. And then he heard it again, a horse's voice calling out. Not angry, not frightened, calling like it was looking for someone, calling like it was looking for him. Thomas put on his boots and his jacket. He walked through the cold night to the barn. His old bones hurt with every step, but he walked faster anyway. He walked because that call meant something. That call meant Hope was looking for him. When he got to the barn, Hope was at the fence, her ears forward, her eyes bright in the moonlight. She saw him and whinnied softly. She walked to him and put her head against his chest. Thomas understood something in that moment. Hope did not need to be broken. Hope did not need to be useful in the way Jake described. Hope just needed to know that someone was coming back, that someone would not leave, that broken things could still be loved, even if they never became anything else. And Thomas understood that he needed the same thing. Thomas Mercer stood in the darkness of the barn, holding the dark foal against his chest. Hope's heartbeat matched his own, fast, strong, alive. For the first time in many years, Thomas felt like his heart was beating for a reason, like he was not just waiting to die, like he was living. He did not sleep that night. He sat with Hope in the barn, and they watched the stars move across the sky together. Hope rested her head on his lap, and Thomas ran his old hands down her neck, feeling the muscles underneath, feeling the strength that was hidden inside her. "You are not broken," he whispered to her. "Everyone said you were broken, but you are not. You are just waiting. We are both waiting." When the sun came up, Thomas had made a decision. He was going to train Hope. Not the way Jake said, not to break her spirit and make her into a tool. He was going to train her the way they had been training each other for the last 4 weeks, with patience, with quiet, with love. He was going to teach her to carry a saddle and a rider, not because she was a tool, but because she chose to, because she trusted him. Thomas spent the next 3 days preparing. He took out the old saddle that he had owned for 40 years. It was his saddle, the one he had used on his ranch before he lost it. The leather was worn and soft from decades of use. It smelled like dust and oil and memory. Thomas cleaned it carefully. He oiled it. He made sure every strap was strong and every buckle worked. He set the saddle on the fence where Hope could see it. He let her smell it. He let her get used to it. Hope was curious. She sniffed the saddle carefully. She licked it. She did not seem afraid. She seemed interested, like she was learning a new thing about the world. On the 4th morning, Thomas woke before dawn. His heart was beating fast with nerves and hope mixed together. Today was the day. Today he would put the saddle on her back for the first time. He walked to the barn in the darkness. The stars were still out. The world was still sleeping. Hope was waiting at the fence, like always. She greeted him with a soft sound, a hello between friends. Thomas brought the saddle blanket first. He had done this with Hope already. She had smelled it, and she knew it. He walked to her slowly. He spoke to her in his quiet voice. "We're going to do something new today, Hope. Something brave. I need you to trust me. I need you to be brave, like you've been brave every day since I met you. Can you do that? Can you trust me?" Hope did not answer with words, but she stood still. She stood like she was ready. Thomas placed the saddle blanket on her back very slowly. He did not rush. He let her feel it. He let her understand it. Hope's ears moved back and forth, but she did not run. She did not kick. She stood and let him place it. "Good girl," Thomas whispered. "Good, brave girl." Then, very carefully, he lifted the saddle. It was heavy in his old arms. His muscles shook a little with the weight. But he lifted it high and placed it gently on her back. Hope went very still. Her whole body became like stone. Thomas could feel her fear. He could feel her wanting to run. But she did not run. She stayed with him. She stayed because she trusted him. "I know," Thomas said softly. "I know this is strange. I know this is new. But you can do this. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you think." He buckled the saddle slowly, one strap at a time. Hope trembled, but did not move. Her eyes were wide, but she kept looking at Thomas. She kept her eyes on him like he was the only safe thing in the world. When the saddle was finally on, Thomas stepped back and looked at her. Hope stood with the saddle on her back. She was shaking. Her nostrils were flaring. But she was standing. She was holding. She was brave. "Yes," Thomas said, tears coming to his old eyes. "Yes, Hope. You did it. You did it." For the next hour, Thomas just let Hope wear the saddle. He walked around the pen with her. He talked to her. He let her understand that the saddle was not going to hurt her. The saddle was not going to break her. It was just a thing on her back, and she was strong enough to carry it. By the time the sun came all the way up, Hope was walking around the pen like the saddle was part of her, like she had been born with it. That evening, Jake Morrison came by the barn again. He saw Thomas and Hope together. He saw the saddle on her back. He watched them for a long time without speaking. "You put a saddle on her," Jake said finally. "I did," Thomas answered. "And she did not buck it off?" "No." Jake walked closer to the fence. He looked at Hope's face. He looked at her eyes. He looked at how she stood next to Thomas, calm, trusting, present. "How did you do that?" Jake asked. "What did you train her?" "I did not train her," Thomas said. "I loved her. That is the only thing any of us ever needed. To be loved when we are broken. To be believed in when nobody else believes. To be seen when everyone else has looked away." Jake did not say anything. He stood there for a long time, and Thomas could see something moving in his face. Something soft. Something that looked like understanding. "I was wrong," Jake said finally. "About the horse. About you. About what makes a thing worth something." Thomas nodded. He was not angry at Jake. He understood that Jake had been taught to think the way he thought, just like the rest of the world had been taught that broken things should be thrown away. That night, after Jake left, Thomas sat in the barn with Hope. He leaned against her side, and she leaned back against him. The saddle was still on her back, and she was comfortable with it now. "Tomorrow," Thomas whispered, "tomorrow I will ride you. Not because I have to, not because you are a tool, but because we're going to ride together. Because we're going to show this town what broken things can become when someone loves them enough to believe." Hope breathed softly in the darkness, and in her breath, Thomas heard the sound of hope itself. The morning was cold and clear when Thomas Mercer decided to ride into town. He had waited 5 more days after putting the saddle on Hope. 5 more days of walking with her in the pen. 5 more days of letting her understand that he was going to be on her back and it was going to be okay. 5 more days of building the trust between them so strong that nothing, not fear, not pain, not the whole world watching, could break it. Now, on this gray morning in early winter, Thomas was ready. He wore his old clothes, the ones he had worn when he was a rancher, when he was someone people knew. The clothes were worn and patched, but they were clean. He brushed his hair. He even trimmed his beard with an old knife. He was going to be seen, and he wanted to be remembered as a man, not as a ghost. Hope stood at the fence, waiting for him. She had grown stronger in the past 5 weeks. Her coat was shining now. Her ribs were no longer showing. Her eyes were bright and alive. The scars were still there, marks on her neck, thin lines on her sides, but they were no longer the story. The story was her beauty. The story was her strength. The story was her ability to love again. Thomas brought the saddle and the blanket. Hope stood perfectly still as he placed them on her back. She had learned this. She trusted this. She trusted him. Today, Thomas whispered, today we show them. Today we show them what broken things can become. Today we show them that love is stronger than fear. That patience is stronger than force. That one person believing in something can change everything. He pulled himself up on her back. For a moment, everything was still. Hope had never felt his full weight before. She had never carried him. Her muscles went tight. Thomas felt her fear like a wave. He could feel her wanting to buck him off, to run, to escape. But she did not. Instead, she took a long breath. She relaxed, and she stood there, waiting, trusting, brave. I know, Thomas said, patting her neck. I know this is big, but you are bigger. You can do this. We can do this. He pressed his heels softly against her sides, the way he had done with horses long ago, when he was a different man. Hope moved forward slowly. One step, then another, then another. She was walking with Thomas on her back, and her heart was not breaking. Her spirit was not breaking. She was choosing to carry him because she loved him. They left the barn at dawn. The road into town was empty at first. Just dust and grass and the sound of Hope's hooves on the hard ground. Thomas sat tall on her back, even though his old body ached. He sat like he was a man again, like he was alive. As they got closer to town, people started to notice. The first person was Mrs. Helen from the store. She was sweeping the front step when she saw them coming down the main road. She stopped sweeping. She stared. Then she called out loud, "Tom! Tom Mercer!" People started coming out of their houses and shops. The blacksmith came out of his forge. The preacher came out of the church. Children stopped playing in the street. Even the saloon doors swung open, and men came out to watch. The whole town, it seemed, was gathering to see what old Tom had done. Thomas rode slowly down the main street. He did not rush. He did not show off. He simply rode with quiet dignity on a horse that everyone had said was broken. Everyone had said was dangerous. Everyone had said would kill him. But Hope was not dangerous. She was beautiful. As Thomas passed down the street, people gasped. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Some pointed. Some wept. The stable keeper, Curtis, he actually had tears running down his face. "Impossible," he whispered. "That is impossible." Jake Morrison stood outside his house, watching. His face showed something like wonder, something like regret, something like understanding. Hope moved with grace that nobody expected. Her dark coat shined in the morning light. Her scars were visible. The world could see that this horse had suffered, that she had known pain, that she had been beaten down by life. But her scars were not the story anymore. Her strength was the story. Her trust was the story. Her ability to love again was the story. Thomas stopped Hope in the middle of the street, right in front of the saloon where all the men were standing. He looked at their faces. He saw the shock. He saw the shame. He saw the understanding starting to come into their eyes, understanding that they had been wrong, that a broken thing was not a worthless thing, that patience could heal what force could only hurt, that love could do what power never could. "This horse," Thomas said in a voice that was quiet but strong enough for everyone to hear, "this horse was supposed to be dangerous. This horse was supposed to be broken beyond fixing. This horse was supposed to kill me." He patted Hope's neck slowly. "But she was not broken," Thomas continued. "She was just alone. She was just scared. She was just waiting for someone to believe that she was worth saving. And I was the same way. I lost my ranch. I lost my wife. I lost my place in this town. I was broken too. I was alone too. I was waiting for someone to believe I was worth saving." Tears were running down many faces now. Even some of the hard men were crying. "This horse taught me something," Thomas said. "Broken things do not need to be thrown away. Broken things do not need to be beaten into usefulness. Broken things just need to be loved. That is all any of us ever need." He looked at Hope's face, at her eyes that were now full of light and life. "Her name is Hope," Thomas said, "and she saved me just as much as I saved her." For a moment, the whole town was silent. Then someone started clapping. It was Jake Morrison. He was clapping, and tears were running down his face. Then Mrs. Helen started clapping. Then Curtis. Then the preacher. Then the children. Then everyone. The entire town was clapping for a broken horse and an old man who had believed in each other. Thomas rode Hope slowly back down the street the way they had come. People reached out as they passed, not to touch Hope with force, but gently, with respect, with love, with the understanding that broken things were brave things, that scars were marks of survival, that coming back from nothing was the greatest strength of all. When they reached the edge of town, Thomas stopped and turned around one more time. He looked at all the faces watching him. He looked at the town that had forgotten him and now remembered. "Thank you," he said simply, "for watching, for believing, for understanding." Then he rode Hope back toward the barn, toward home. That evening, Thomas sat in the barn with Hope. She stood next to him, her head resting on his shoulder. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple and gold. "We did it," Thomas whispered to her. "We did it, Hope. We showed them that broken things can be beautiful. We showed them that love is the strongest thing in the world. We showed them that even when everything is lost, you can find your way home." Hope breathed softly, and her breath sounded like peace. Thomas Mercer had lost his ranch. He had lost his wife. He had lost his place in the world. But he had not lost himself. And in saving a broken horse, he had found himself again. They stood together in the last light of day, an old man and a young horse, both broken, both beautiful, both home at last. The end.